Hey guys, I just wanted to talk to you about a couple of changes that we're going to be making to the auditorium for this coming Sunday. Some of these changes we just want to try out, see how they go, and see what people's reactions are, and just see if it does what we're hoping it does. But I wanted to explain the reason why we're making the changes. We're really making the changes for three things. We want to enhance the guest experience as they come in, and so that's the very first thing we're looking to accomplish with these changes. Second thing that we want to do is we want to create a more natural flow for people into the auditorium. Again, like I mentioned in some recent trainings, we're looking at encouraging people to sit more up in the front and less in the back. It really helps with engagement in the service. And so we want to create a natural flow for people into the service, but then we also want to make it easy for people to get back to guest services and next steps after the service. Those are the two places where people can take next steps. For a guest, they can go and get a bag and give a face to the name. For our regular Wellers, being able to go back to next steps is how they get plugged into Growth Track, how they learn about that, how they learn about getting into a small group. This particular weekend, we're going to be launching our small group signups, so we want to create that natural flow back there where people can do that. And so I just wanted to explain, again, it's about enhancing the experience for the guest. It's about creating a more natural flow into the service, and then also a natural flow back to things like guest center and next steps. So I just wanted to tell you the reason why we made these changes. Again, we're just trying these out to see what people think and how they react to them, but also just to see if it accomplishes what we're hoping it does. And so none of these are hard, concrete decisions that we've made yet or changes. Again, we just want to try it a few weeks and see what happens. So now I'm going to show you what are the changes that we made here in the auditorium. It affects the cafe, it affects guest center, and it affects next steps. So those are the three areas, mainly just the back of the auditorium. So I'm going to show you that in just a second here. So some of the big changes that you're going to notice that we made, again, we're testing this out, is we actually removed the cafe carts from the back, and we actually put the pub tables back here. This was strategically done because we noticed that when guests come in, the very first thing that they gravitate towards is the coffee. But unfortunately, the coffee is placed in a position where they were always having to fill up their coffee and their backs were facing the rest of the room. And so that created kind of a negative experience for them. We also noticed that two of the big places that we want them to engage in is in the next steps and in the guest center area. Now, this was designed, when we designed all of this area back here, it was being utilized for different things, but now it's being used for guest center and for next steps. And so we actually removed the counter that was here and we moved the barrel over to the side. Now people can naturally move into these areas, so guests can get a guest bag. Also, we can put whoever the communicator is right here on the very edge, and so they are more accessible for people. Over here in the next steps area, we did the same thing. We moved the coffee cart that was here out of the way. That was a barrier for people getting around it. Also created some congestion that we didn't want. And so now people can naturally move back here, easily access the computers for small groups. They can grab a Bible, journal, especially for those people who made first-time commitments for Christ. We also moved the lost and found over here, and the main reason is we just didn't want that cluttering up the area. So it's kind of tucked over in the corner now. So this is one of the changes. And then we also moved these cafe carts over here. So now these are situated so that they are really creating the back of the seating area. And so now what happens is when I come in to get coffee, instead of me going to the back, I'm actually moving towards the seat for coffee. Remember, I said that one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to create a more natural flow for people to move into the auditorium. And so by creating the coffee up here, our hope is that people will naturally grab coffee and move to the front versus grabbing coffee and moving to the center, which is where these pub tables were. Also now with the coffee being back here, people, most of our Wellers, will stop and engage the coffee right here, refilling their cup, which will create more free and open paths back to guest center and the next steps. Don't worry, this will not be staying here. We are actually getting ready to move it out. But one of the things I want to show you is now, as I'm coming out of this side of the auditorium, if I'm walking up this aisleway, as you can see, it's kind of free and open for me to naturally move into the guest center spot, or over on the other side, it's natural for me to move right into the next step spot. So again, we wanted to enhance the customer experience or the guest experience. And so by putting the coffee up here, they're looking into the room as opposed to looking at a wall. We wanted to create a more natural flow for people to move into the auditorium. And so by putting it here, our hope is they grab coffee and immediately move up into the auditorium. And then the last thing that we wanted to do was create a more natural flow to guest center and next steps. And so by opening up these aisleways here, we've now created that open, free, moving experience for people into next steps and guest center. So those are the changes that we made. Again, like I said, we want to run this for a couple of weeks and see what it's like. There's some things that we're still thinking about as far as overflow. How do we put in additional seats? Again, when we put out seats, it's usually in a temporary standpoint, and so we could put some folding chairs in these areas right here, still leaving an aisleway for the carts. We are looking at some options for facing the back of these carts. Right now they're okay because the chairs go up against them for the most part, but if we are going to keep it this way, we do want to address the back here, make that a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. But the coffee carts are pretty much set up exactly like they were before, but now they're just in different positions. And so, like I said, we want to run this a little bit, see what it's like, get some people's feedback on it, and then make a decision if we're going to keep this as a permanent setup or if we're going to look at something different. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to call or email me or text me. I'd love to get your thoughts, and we'll just run it and see what happens. Thanks, guys.